How's it going, Kittanning? We're back for another episode of the Kittanning podcast. I'm here with a special guest today, Dr. Amanda Slagle, and thanks
Hi.
for coming and joining today.
Yes, I'm really excited. This is where all the cool kids in Kittanning hang out, I hear.
That's what I'm hoping. This is going to be like the who's who around Kittanning. Like, if you make it to the Kittanning podcast, you just made it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think this is episode number 5, so you're one of the first guests still.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are in the community, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Well, I originally grew up in Kittanning and then recently moved back about a year ago. And I took over Dr. Flanders' chiropractic practice here in town. Dr. Flanders was practicing here for 43 years. He faithfully served Kittanning, and so May 1st I took over his chiropractic practice, and we're in the same building right behind the post office, as he was all those years.
Okay, so when did you start that? How long ago was that?
May 1st was the very first day we took over.
Okay.
So we've been here 5 months now.
Well, very cool.
Yeah. Very
cool. And how's it going? Is it going okay, I'm assuming?
Yeah. We've had so much positive feedback and support from the existing patient base, and then a few new patients, that have also found us. And I couldn't be more pleased with that. And Rich and Pam Flanders, have been so supportive and so instrumental in helping that transition go really smooth. And I couldn't be more grateful for them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you know, I was in a similar situation. I took over for like 40-some years State Farm agent. So,
I didn't realize that.
So it was kind of like that similar transition. So, But I do want to know more about your business. We'll talk more about that. But
okay.
I kind of want to go back through and just learn more about you as a person. I know just getting to know you over the past few weeks, it's been really interesting, all the things that you've been a part of over time.
Okay.
And I know you grew up in Kittanning, right?
Technically Spaces Corners is where my parents live.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, we're just, we're just up 66 a little bit. Graduated from Kittanning High School, and I may have been the only person I know that moved once and ended up going to 3 separate schools because of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We moved, we lived out near Rural Valley, and I'd gone to Shannock Valley a few years, and then we moved to Spaces Corners where my parents still live. And at that time, they had closed Spaces Elementary, moved everybody here, consolidated high schools. So I went to the building they're just tearing down now for the 5th grade. And then they reopened Spaces Corners, so we went back out there for 6th grade.
Oh, my.
And then they brought us back down to that same building for 7th and 8th grade, but they renamed it as, I think it was Kittanning Area Middle School then, and then I went to Kittanning High School. So one move, 3 schools, all different names, but it was only 2 buildings. It was really crazy.
So the Kittanning school history is even more crazy than I'm aware of, because I know all the closings and openings with Ford City and Kittanning. They combined at one point, re-separated. Elderton closed several times.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. There's been a lot of a moving and changing the structure of that to really find something that fits the community.
Yeah.
So it seems like now I think they have a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah.
So.
And they're tearing stuff down, so there's no going back at this point.
No, for sure. Yeah, not a whole lot you can undo there.
Right. So what was it like growing up in Kittanning? How did you feel about the town when you were growing up? What was all that like? What was your childhood like?
I grew up more outside of town, and so that was a more rural experience. We had chickens and some things like that growing up. But unfortunately, I really grew up in the town when it was at its peak of the decline.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is factually correct, but at least we were told around that time when I was graduating high school that the biggest employer at that time was Walmart, and it hadn't even been converted to a super Walmart at that point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, when I was young, we had PPG here, and we had Elder here, and those were huge sources for work and income. And I can remember growing up and those things closing down, and my friends' dads losing their jobs and things like that. So unfortunately, growing up, I didn't have a really positive attitude about the town because I was seeing some of the worst of the decline.
Absolutely.
And so when I graduated high school from Kittanning here in 1999, I headed off to college and had no plans of ever coming back.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my friends and classmates. And yet here we are, and I'm back.
Well, it's really interesting because I just visited the 10th grade class. I was teaching driver's ed for the day. And it was like 90% of the kids there probably 90%. It was like 2 out of every 20 were said they want to live in Armstrong County when they grow up and raise a family here.
Wow.
And so it was really crazy, because I think that's something that we really need to get a hold of, because
absolutely.
if we keep losing the top 10, 20, 50% of kids, it's going to be a real problem for the town moving forward. You have like kind of brain drain.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we need like the smart doctor level people to come back to town and start businesses. Like that's what Kittanning's going to need to thrive throughout the future. So
yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting. Okay, so what was that? I just want to know a little bit more, because just from your perspective as someone who was younger when the Alger plants closed, I know a lot of people who were working age when that was happening. So from your perspective, as that happened, as those things were closing down, like what was the air like in Kittanning at that point? I mean, what was the feeling around here?
Wow. There was a lot of just heaviness, I think would be about the best description, and a lot of uncertainty. It felt like in so many ways the community had the rug pulled out from under it.
Yeah.
Especially when PPG closed, because especially the town of Ford City, even more so. I mean, the town was basically founded around the plant, and now its roots were gone.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty, and and even though I was still fairly young when that was happening, we all knew what was happening, and we all picked up on it,
right.
For sure. So anytime you have a community that experiences that level of loss, it's going to leave some scars.
Absolutely.
Just on the psyche of the whole community.
I always think of like if a community could be depressed as an individual is depressed,
yes.
like that's what I feel like it would have felt like. I wasn't here, but
I think that's a really good description, because people were very anxious and very hopeless, because they just didn't see any good ever coming back.
Yeah.
So it was a really tough time for the town, for sure.
Okay. I was just curious. I know that's not on our list here to talk about.
Hey, but that's okay. That's a great question.
Yeah. So after that then, so you graduate high school, you went to college, I'm assuming, somewhere?
Yes. I did my undergrad at Penn State Behrend up in Erie, PA.
Yeah.
So I spent 4 years living in Erie, dealing with snow up there.
Yeah.
Great school though, and came home for a few months and then moved to Buffalo, New York. So we did 6 years of living in heavy lake effect snow areas.
Wow. Okay. So did you do like graduate school there, or how did
No. I did my undergrad and then came home for a little bit, got a job, got married, and then we headed out to Buffalo.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yes, and my husband's a native too, and so he grew up here. He grew up, actually in the borough, so he's even got stronger Kittanning roots, I think, than I do.
Oh wow, okay, very cool. Maybe we got to talk to him someday.
Yeah.
So you go from here to Erie to Buffalo, and then where did you end up?
After 2 years in Buffalo, New York, and more snow than I even knew was possible, I took a job transfer and went to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
And we were in Dallas-Fort Worth for 11 years then, before we came back to Pennsylvania.
Oh wow, okay. So you were really ingrained down there at that point.
Yeah, Dallas-Fort Worth is always going to hold a special place for us, because it wasn't necessarily where we were from, but it definitely was home for a long time. We had our daughter there. We had a great, community and friends there, and it was tough to leave for sure. Although the last summer being there when I was 9 months pregnant helped kind of, shift us to leave for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've only had one baby in the summer, and my wife said, I like winter babies better.
Yeah.
So you travel all around, and then you ultimately decided to come back to Kittanning. What made you guys decide to come back, and how did that all happen?
Well, we definitely wanted to move back closer to our family. After being gone so long, we were feeling that void of being so far away from family. We were 1,300 miles away. That's a 2-day car drive, or it's 24 hours if you drive it straight through. But you got to be really committed to do that.
Absolutely.
We've done it a few times.
Yeah.
But it was just really hard to have that really close relationship with your family when you're that far away physically.
Yeah.
And then when we had our daughter, we're like, okay, we wanted to be closer to family. We weren't really sure where we were going to land permanently, but we knew we wanted to be close to family. And so when I graduated chiropractic school a year ago, I had a job offer for a 1-year contract in Johnstown. And so I was going to cover an office there. Okay. While the owner was moving out of state and it was for sale. And so, it was going to be a coverage position for a year. And so that was going to give us a place to land, and we could, make our final decision about where we were going to settle. Ultimately, it was going to be somewhere in western Pennsylvania, probably within about an hour radius of Armstrong County, because, again, we wanted that closeness.
Yep.
And then the day we left Texas, that practice unexpectedly sold, and the job offer was gone.
Oh, my gosh.
So we went from plan A to plan Z really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
So, yeah.
And then I'm assuming just through the passage of time, you ended up connecting with Dr. Flanders and all that stuff happened?
Yeah. Well, when you move across country and you and your spouse don't have jobs yet, and you have a 2-year-old, well, she wasn't even quite 1 yet, actually, when we left Texas. You hit the ground running really fast to make something happen. Because you can't live in your mama and daddy's house forever.
Right.
Shout out to mom and dad for letting us crash there. But, so I got here and I just started networking and reaching out to every chiropractor I could find in the area. And I had 3 questions. Do you know someone's hiring? Are you hiring? Or do you know somebody who wants to sell a practice?
Yeah.
Because the proper ramp up time to really open a practice from scratch is a good 6 to 9 month ramp up period.
Oh yeah.
And it's it's a big commitment. And that's what my plan was. After the year of working in Johnstown, we were going to go ahead and do that, but without that foundation of a year working in a really good profitable position, we had to hit the ground running and more bootstrap it than I would have been comfortable with.
Yeah.
So when I reached out to several chiropractors in the area, all of them were super receptive and super helpful. People gave me some people to talk to and job leads and things like that. And ultimately I called Dr. Flanders, just basically cold called him and asked him the same questions. And it turned out that he'd been really thinking hard about retiring. He'd cut his hours back over the last several years just to, preserve his own health.
Right.
And he just never found the right person that he felt comfortable handing his patients over to, because as you can imagine, after 43 years, his patients really were family to him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of close friendships and close relationships there, and he didn't feel comfortable just handing those people to anybody.
Absolutely.
So as we started talking, we both realized we had very similar philosophies on what it meant to take care of a patient chiropractically. Also, our values were much in line as far as, our appointments are a little bit longer than a typical chiropractor's appointment. We give people the time they need. I try really hard to run on schedule, but if I run a little late, at least the patients understand that if it's their turn and they need a little extra time, they're going to get it too.
Right,
so most of my patients are understanding about that part of it too.
Well, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you ended up here instead of Johnstown. I mean, we need you here for sure. So.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put together the timeline, just math in my head. So you were away 6 years up north, 11 years down south. So 17 years passed from when you left Kittanning to when you came back. So what all was different when you came back? What did the town feel like to come back here after kind of being here after the fall? I
had to really check my conception of the town, because while some things were the same, I mean, Miller's Hoagie Shop still there,
right.
But they have a 3rd location now, and and they handed the restaurant down a generation, so things were changing. But it was really neat to see some of the new businesses that had come into town, like Yamamoto. I couldn't imagine a sushi place in Kittanning in my wildest dreams. I mean, even in Butler, a sushi place had struggled, in the past. So I was really shocked about that. I was really pleasantly surprised to see people actively moving to Kittanning. I was running into people all the time that were saying, oh yeah, I moved here from such and such, or I moved here. And I'm like, why did you move here again? It caught me off guard a little bit. But it was a good thing.
You have to take that mind shift, because people always asked us that too. They were like, wait, you're not from here and you came to Kittanning? Why would you do that? Exactly. And I had to check that mindset, because when you look at Kittanning,
as far as what it has to offer, there's actually a lot here, a lot of raw materials, so forth. I mean, we have a beautiful river here. We have, the facilities of the park here.
Yeah.
You have a pretty decent school district. Now, I've lived in a few different states, and let me say, no school district is perfect.
Absolutely.
But the education I got here in Western Pennsylvania was far superior to the educations I was seeing my friends' children have in other states.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had so many friends in Texas that either homeschooled or did private schooling because of the quality issues. And those were decent schools, but I feel like the education I got here on the East Coast was head and shoulders above what a lot of other places are offering.
Okay. So that kind of leads right in my next question. So just talking about Kittanning, and you've seen a lot of things, Buffalo and Erie are kind of have that Rust Belt, Pittsburgh kind of feel. And then you have, obviously, Dallas-Fort Worth is a totally different world.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
So those, kind of contrast those for me. Is there anything that you really miss about Dallas or Buffalo that you kind of wish was in Kittanning? Or is there anything in Kittanning that you're like, wow, this is so much better than there? Or, just that, I don't know, just off the top of your head, does anything stick out?
Yeah, one of the most startling things when we first moved to Texas was how proud people were to be from Texas.
I've heard that too.
I mean, you can't go anywhere in Texas without seeing a Lone Star symbol somewhere. It's on the overpasses. It decorates all kinds of things on the highways. People have them all over their houses. I mean, and not only that, but there was an extra sense of pride if you had actually been born in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
There was even bumper stickers you'd see a lot where people would say, native born Texan. So, I mean, there was like this extra level of pride because they'd actually been born in Texas, too. So I just never been anywhere that was so proud of where it is and what it is.
Well, that's a huge contrast with Kittanning, right?
Oh,
because people are, if you go anywhere and you're from Kittanning, it's like people almost like they like whisper it. I'm from or they'll say I'm from north of Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
that's how people from Kittanning would introduce themselves to me before I moved here. I'm like, okay, well, just tell me you're from Kittanning. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed about.
So that was a definite culture shock for us. The other thing was just the availability of stuff. I mean, the neighborhood I lived in before we moved back, I'm trying to think. I could be at 3 different Walmarts, a Sam's Club, a Costco, and 2 different Targets within a 10-minute drive of my house.
Oh, my, yeah.
That's really different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes I do miss a little bit of that convenience factor. Because if something wasn't at one store, well, I could just drive 10 minutes and get it at a different location, and I could usually get what I wanted.
Yep.
So accessibility is something I do miss a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So when you kind of have that trade-off, then as we moved from Greensburg, and where we lived, we were right between the mall on one end and Best Buy and all that stuff, and then the other end had Target and Walmart. And we were 10 minutes from everything also. So that was a struggle for us too. Now the trade-off is like you get the small town feel with Kittanning. You might have to drive a little bit further, but in a lot of ways we like it better here.
Yeah.
Do you have anything about Kittanning that you're like, oh wow, this is what we like this better here?
2 things really stick out. The first one is traffic.
Oh yeah.
My last commute was 16 miles in Dallas-Fort Worth, and depending on traffic, it could take me over an hour to make that 16-mile trip. And it was highways. It wasn't even back roads. It was highways. And Lord help us if there had been an accident on one of the main intersections or one of the main interstates, because that just threw everything off into chaos. So traffic was a huge thing, and that was a big step of quality of life for us. Being in a smaller area and not having to deal with traffic like that. I mean, that would take years off your life dealing with some of the traffic issues.
And you only have so much time with your kids too.
Yes.
And that's like, if you're spending 2 hours in traffic every day, I don't even know what I would do, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I would pick my daughter up from daycare and boogie home, and I'd pick her up. I left my internship and would had to be at the daycare to pick her up before 6. Which I had to leave my internship early to make sure I could get my daughter on time, because you don't pick up a baby from daycare late. That's a big no-no. And we would hit the highway at 6, which is prime traffic time. And we would be, it would be close to 7 o'clock by the time we would get home. And with a really young child, that's basically we get her in, get her bathed, give her food, and then she's to bed. Right. And, you know, that was our existence.
Yeah.
So I really didn't get a lot of time with her during that season.
Yeah.
So thankfully that was a short season for us, you know, till I finished school and finished the internships. And we were able to change, you know, our day-to-day routine. But that was a really tough part of it for a while.
Yeah. And I can imagine, too, I mean, Dallas-Fort Worth is kind of economically pretty vibrant.
Oh, yes.
And then you have, it's obviously growing really fast. And then you have, that brings up cost of living stuff, too, right? So I don't know what cost of living is down there versus here, but, like, what's that look like?
Well, we had a one-bedroom apartment. When I went back to school, you know, we had a pretty modest one-bedroom apartment. And when we first moved in, it was about $550 a month. And by the time we left, it was well over $800 a month.
Oh, wow.
And that's probably about a 700 square foot apartment.
Wow.
And we lived in a suburb that was kind of neighboring the really cool suburbs. So we were kind of on the border there. So there was maybe a little bit cheaper, but most of anywhere outside of the actual city of Dallas, you were talking $700-800 for a one-bedroom apartment. You know, to rent a house is probably $1,500-1,700 a month. Just to rent, you know, a couple-bedroom house. So the cost of living really escalated while we were there. Because it became such a hub, and there were so many people moving there. You know, people were in bidding wars to buy houses. I had a friend that her and her husband were trying to buy a house. They were bidding on houses they didn't even look at.
Wow.
Because their realtor had a checklist, and if the house met that list, they automatically put a bid in for it.
Wow.
They didn't even see them.
It's like, we'll go look at it later.
Yeah, pretty much, because that's how hot the market was, and that's cool for sellers, not so much for buyers.
Right.
But the other thing, though, that we found we preferred about Kittanning is just more of a sense of community and more authentic relationships. Dallas-Fort Worth is full of optimism and opportunity, but it's also full of really pretty people who hide their struggles and hide their baggage behind closed doors.
Yeah. Like a fakeness kind of
thing. Yeah. And not that's, I mean, I think that's an even more prevalent problem because of social media sometimes. You know, it's really easy to put on a good front on Facebook or Instagram or whatever your social media choice is. And then behind closed doors, your life's a wreck. That's an easy thing to do. It just seemed like it was an even bigger problem there because of how much opportunity and money and influence and stuff was going around in those areas.
Yeah.
You know, an example I can think of is, you know, Dallas-Fort Worth is such a prosperous area, but it's also one of the biggest areas in the country for bankruptcies.
Oh, wow.
For personal bankruptcies. So while everyone puts on a good front and drives a nice car, there's also record high bankruptcies too.
Right.
And, you know, we went to a really great church there. It was a, you know, big church in the community, had multiple locations even, you know, and we had, you know, a woman who, you know, her and her family seemed like they had everything going for them. Everything was going right. Looked great on the surface. And one day she came home and was shot in her own home when she came home that day. And it turns out it was her husband had hired somebody to kill her.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that really makes you pause when you're like, okay, this whole family looked like they had it all together and were the perfect family. But everything was so bad behind closed doors that her husband had gone out and found somebody to try to murder his own wife. I mean, that is a level of you know,
like deception.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking, and thankfully the woman survived the shooting. But you know, that really sent a lot of ripples through the whole community and through our church, because how do you make sense of that?
Yeah.
So definitely people in Kittanning are a lot more forthright. Yeah. If they got a problem with you, they'll probably tell you about it.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's none of that, oh, bless your heart, and I'll talk about you when you leave.
Right.
You know, it's a lot more upfront. So we do appreciate that part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that too. Like if my customers have a problem, I'll always get a phone call pretty much. That won't be like, it's not this fake front, but that allows you to then engage in conversation and actually solve the issue. So,
absolutely.
I mean, I love that.
It's easy to fix the problem you know about.
Right.
It's really hard to fix a problem you don't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Well, that maybe can segue right into our chiropractic talk here.
Okay.
I want to know a little bit more about your business. So I know we've talked a little bit about kind of how you do business. I know you mentioned a little bit about how you take longer with patients, those kinds of things. So like, what all services do you offer at your place? Any kind of specialties do you have? Any of that kind of stuff? Just tell me a little bit more.
Well, for anybody who's not familiar with chiropractic in general, chiropractic care is geared toward addressing structural issues that have impact on the whole body. So for instance, the brain and nervous system control everything in your body, whether it's direct input or it's more indirect.
Sure.
So, controlling the motor movement of your muscles, direct input into some of the hormonal things that happen into your body and start that cascade off. Huge influence on your immune system, all of these things.
Yeah. And
so we really want to make sure that master computer that's running the show is healthy and functioning at its top, because if the computer isn't working, nothing's going to work quite right.
Right.
So we absolutely want to make sure that is well taken care of. And so with chiropractic care, we can access the nervous system through the spine. The spine has more joints in it than any other area of the body. Each level of your spine, depending on where it is, can have 13 or more joints at each level.
Oh, wow.
And so those joints give a lot of input into the brain. And so I can access the nervous system through the spine, almost like a fuse box.
Yeah.
So that's really, the access point for us. So when I'm looking at a patient, I'm looking at how is their body functioning overall. And there's different things I'm going to look at to give me some clues. An obvious thing I may look at is their posture, because there's a very direct link between posture and function of several different systems. So if somebody's got poor posture, if they're sitting there and their one shoulder's up and the other shoulder's down, I know there's other things going on that are wrong.
Yeah, I feel like I need to sit up now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So posture's one thing we look at. We take x-rays in the office, so I want to see the actual bones to see how they are faring. If they're healthy and robust, it tells me that, the body is functioning in a better way. If there's lots of arthritis, if there's lots of signs of injury, then we know we've got work to do there.
So you're going pretty in depth with people.
Yes.
That's like an initial consultation.
Yes,
okay.
yes. We also, I'm checking things like their reflexes, because that's a deep tendon reflex is prime neurological territory. We want to make sure that those are working. We check the sensory on your skin to make sure that you're feeling things normally throughout your arms and legs. And I do a history with patients. I want to know everything about what's been going on. I need to know their surgical history. We need to know my female patients. I ask them if they've had any babies. Did they have C-sections? Did they have vaginal births? Did they have difficulties? That actually changes a lot how we address things in the low back and pelvis. If I have a patient who has a history of concussions, that changes a lot of how we care for them as well. So we need to know all of it. And so, my patients start out with a big questionnaire that gives me a snapshot. We go through their history. We're going to look at x-rays. We're going to look at, sensory. We're going to look at their reflexes, muscle strength. A lot of times I'll watch them walk to see how their knees and feet and ankles are interplaying with everything. We'll check range of motion to make sure, like, you can turn your head the proper amount from side to side. I can't tell you how that should make you feel good as an insurance agent, that I make sure my patients can turn their head to look
right
to look when they're driving.
Can they get over their shoulder?
You wouldn't believe how much of a common issue that is. And
that's crazy.
That's a very common feedback I get is, oh man, I can look and see so much easier when I'm driving.
Wow.
That's a really common feedback I get.
Really?
Yes.
That's really
You should
cool.
be happy with that as an agent.
I am super happy about that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we really want to make sure that whole system is functioning at its best.
Yeah.
And so it may, a lot of times my patients will call me up because something hurts really bad. And of course we're going to address that because
that's what I always think of when I think of chiropractor.
Absolutely.
Like, I put up my back and I'm like, I need some help.
Absolutely. But, one of the biggest wins for chiropractic is a lot of the issues that don't come about because you've been under good care.
Yeah.
So that's actually some of my, favorite things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research out there about young people, little kids who've been under chiropractic care their lives and, the trajectories they have of good health. And so, my little girl, let's see here, when I had my daughter, I had one of my friends who was a chiropractor at the birthing center with me and adjusted me while I was in labor. And then my daughter was adjusted the first time by someone else when she was 4 days old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. So she's been getting checked and adjusted since she was 4 days old.
Wow. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the links, like with health. You're saying that if you start with chiropractic care just as a precautionary or like a kind of regimented thing from a young age, you have better health outcomes later on in life?
Well, if you can imagine, let's use a car, for example.
Yeah.
If you buy a brand new car off the lot and you take it in and get your oil changes every 3,000 miles and you get your service checks done and you change your filters and you change your tires and have your tires rotated and do all those things that we all know we should do, but maybe we kind of forget about or put them off.
Right.
You know that you're putting the odds in your favor that your car is going to last longer and function better.
Okay.
And I think that chiropractic care is much the same way. I want to help my patients put the odds in their favor, whatever life throws at them.
Yeah.
So whether it's somebody who is, an older patient and they just want to maintain as much mobility as they can so they can stay in their home longer and not have to go to an assisted living facility or have someone come in to help take care of them, that is a great goal for chiropractic.
Yeah.
Or if it's helping your kids, optimize their immune system function so that they get sick a little bit less often through their school years, that's a great thing too.
Yeah. And that's something I never really think about when I think of chiropractor, but that's awesome. It kind of like when I go into, I don't know if you got to hear the podcast a few weeks ago with Joanne, but you're kind of approaching from a body standpoint first, I'm guessing.
Yes.
She's approaching from kind of a mental standpoint or an emotional standpoint first. But you both kind of have the same mission, it seems like, of this holistic medicine where
very much
all those things have to play together in order for you to be truly healthy.
Absolutely.
And so do you see a lot of links between that? I'm just curious, like between physical health, mental health, emotional health? Oh
my gosh, absolutely. And chiropractic philosophy, the actual thought process behind chiropractic is very congruent with that. Because as chiropractors, we're addressing structural issues that come up because the body hasn't been able to process something that's been thrown at it. So whether it's a physical stress like a car accident, everybody thinks about that, or if it's more subtle, like you just have been sitting with awful posture at your desk for the last 5 years and now you're feeling the effects of that. Or it can be chemical stresses. Maybe you're just really having a poor diet, or you're, eating something that you don't realize you're allergic to, or anything like that. I mean, we all know what we should be eating and what we shouldn't.
Right.
Most of that's most of that's not rocket science, but that's a stressor that most of the time your body can take care of itself pretty well. But you may reach a point where your body can't overcome that, and then your system is affected the whole body. Right. But emotional stress is also a big thing. If you're under a ton of stress at work and you have no healthy way of coping with that, your body is going to bear the brunt of that too.
Yeah.
And so I can tell very quickly when I start working on a patient if they've had a bad week.
That's just crazy, huh?
Yeah. Their body tells a story.
It makes so much sense though, because like for me, I mean, when I'm eating poorly for an extended period of time, I begin to feel it in my mind first. That's what happens first. Is like you kind of have that addictive, like if I'm eating sugar a lot or if I'm drinking too much coffee, it's like that addictive side of my mind just kind of takes over, and I'm more reactive instead of proactive in my mind. And then you can start to feel it in your body if I'm there too long. And so I've actually started like vegan diet every couple of months just to kind of like hit the reset button on things for myself and just kind of bring everything back into balance. But I've never been to a chiropractor, but now I'm thinking like, man, maybe I should go get my oil changed, so to speak, and just do some maintenance on myself because I've had my back out a couple times and
and that's no fun.
It's horrible. So I don't want to go there again. And if you could do something now to prevent that from happening again, that'd be awesome.
I mean, I was not a fan of chiropractic my whole life. I actually never saw a chiropractor until I was 24 years old. And I had gotten thrown off a horse when I was 13. And from age 13 to 24, I had horrendous low back pain all the time.
Wow.
And I even had a flare-up that was so bad my freshman year of college, I ended up in the hospital over it and was using a walker for almost a week because I couldn't stand up on my own power. So being 19 years old and using a walker, like, that's a really humbling experience, and it's a very sobering experience because you're mentally starting to think, what's the quality of my life going to actually be?
Yeah.
Because at 19 years old, if I'm having these problems, what is the future going to hold? And that's a really scary place to be. And so I ended up, when I was 24, one of my friends that I worked with got tired of hearing about me gripe about my back. like so many people who've come into my office. A dear friend was like, you need to shut up about this and go see my chiropractor. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Those people are witch doctors. What are you even talking about? But desperate times, desperate measures. And so I found myself in Dr. Zachary Clark's office. He's a chiropractor who's in Buffalo. His office is right by Ralph Waldo Stadium where the Buffalo Bills play. And for the first time in all those years, he actually had a diagnosis of what was happening with me, explained why it was happening, and explained what we could do to fix it, and gave me a plan. You know, I'd seen orthopedic specialists, like, you know, even when I was in high school. I mean, I know I went to see the guy who at the time was the team doctor for the Steelers. So it wasn't like I was just dealing with it. I was actively trying to get better. I just didn't have the right tools. And so under care with Dr. Clark, I ended up being pain-free in 3 weeks of treatment with him for the first time in those 11 years. That was a huge moment for me. I always joke around, if we ever had a boy, I was going to name him after him. We had a girl, so I kind of lucked out, you know, so we got to pick our name there. But, you know, that definitely changed me into a fan of chiropractic.
Yeah.
And so...
Is that kind of when you decided, hey, this is what I want to do for my life?
You know what? It wasn't until a while later, when I found myself at a transition point in my career, that I decided to make the jump.
Yeah.
But I was a huge fan, and I don't know how many friends and family I had sent to chiropractors at that point. But, you know, so many of my own patients come in because they're hurting, and I understand that, and we work on that. Believe me, I focus really hard on getting them out of pain as fast as possible with as little treatment as possible. But at the end, my goal isn't just to get them out of pain. My goal is to set them up to have the best future trajectory on their health.
Yeah.
So it's not unusual, you know, kind of coming back to where we were talking about emotional challenges and things like that. It's not unusual for me to talk to my patients about managing their stress levels and giving them some tools for that. There's a really great app with breathing meditations I recommend to my patients all the time. Or, you know, getting out and being active, or getting out in nature, you know, whatever it is that really helps them deal with life.
Absolutely.
Life is going to be stressful. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. It's going to have its own unique stresses, and we have to accept life on life's terms. Yeah. And just find a healthy way to manage that. So I talk about stress a lot. I give patients tools a lot for managing stress. You know, if somebody shows signs that they may have some food allergies or food sensitivities, I'll give them some protocols that they can work through to help identify that. You know, and quite frankly, there's sometimes people walk into my office and my office isn't the right place for them to be. Yeah. And I'm okay with sending them to somebody who is the right provider for them, because while chiropractic care is amazing and it's beneficial, you know what, if somebody walks into my office and they need to see a neurosurgeon, or they need to see their MD, or if they need to see an orthopedist, then that's where they need to go. And that's totally fine with me.
Yeah, so you're looking at healing the person, not just making another appointment and making some extra dollars. No. And so that's what bothers me so much about the medical community as a whole, and that's why I love to hear you talk like that, because it feels like when I go to the hospital, they're like, oh, let's run these 20 extra tests. And then I find out later that those 20 tests cost my insurance $3,500. And it feels like this money-making scheme. And so when I hear you talk about that, hey, we just want to get the people the right care and get them out of pain and get them what they need and bring actual healing to them. I don't know. That's just like a breath of fresh air to me. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Well, I just have a couple other questions. Sure. I'm going to take it just a little bit different direction than what we had here, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Fire away.
So when you're in Kittanning, I'm assuming like you're here for the long haul. What are you hoping what are you hoping your contribution to the city is going to be over the next 10, 20, 30 years? What's that look like for you? Like, what's your vision?
Yeah, we're in Kittanning for the long haul. I not only own a business here, but, I own a house in Kittanning as well.
You're invested now.
Yeah, so the roots are going deep. So we're planning on being here for the long haul. And my biggest goal is really just being a good citizen in the community, because as a business owner, I get some opportunities to contribute in different ways. We're doing the application process and everything to be part of DKI, and so we're hoping to be part of the light up night and contributing that way. Also, just being a resource for the community too. Our rep from UPMC Insurance gave us notice, there's a big dental clinic coming up for kids soon. And so, just being able to get that information out to patients so that if they need those services, they can access them. So first and foremost, just using our business to not only support our family, but also to be a good citizen and a good contributor to the community. That's really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that Kittanning has a lot of potential and could really grow in a couple different directions. And I hope that just being part of that and being a good citizen, being, just a good cog in the wheel, can participate in that. So that's really important to us.
Absolutely. So how can people get in touch with you from a business standpoint? And I don't even know if we've said the name of your business. Let's say the name of your business, and then how can people get in touch with you if they need help?
The name of the practice is Foundation Chiropractic.
Okay.
We kept the exact same office as Dr. Flanders did, so we are right behind the post office in downtown. You can even schedule online. Our website is www.foundationchiropa.com.
Okay.
And we also have a Facebook page too. So you can go online, or you can call us at the office and get in if you need help. We're absolutely thrilled to take care of people.
And I'll make sure to put all those links in the description on this video as well, or on this podcast if you're watching this down the road when I've actually figured out how to put this onto an actual podcast.
Oh, nice.
So we'll put all that on there. So if you need to get in touch with Amanda, then you'll know how to do that. So last question.
Okay.
You have a daughter. She's 2 years old?
Yeah, she just turned 2.
Okay. So you grew up in Kittanning. Your daughter, since you're going to be here for the long haul, is going to grow up in Kittanning. What's your hope and dream for her that she'll experience, that her childhood would be like in this city that would be different than yours?
I definitely want her to experience what it's like to have options, because I think that was one of the things that was so tough about the era I grew up in this area, was people didn't feel like they had options.
Okay.
So I want her to feel that she has options in life, and also just to experience that the world is a big place, and Kittanning is a really cool place, and I've come to appreciate in my age that it's a better place than I gave it credit for when I was younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. But, the world's a big place. And so I want her to have that very healthy perspective of Kittanning is home. And there's a lot of good things about it, but there's a big world out there as well.
Yeah. And I believe that for the future of our city, that there's an opportunity here, as the turnaround of Kittanning happens. There's so many towns like Kittanning out there, like Rust Belt towns that were left behind by manufacturing and had that Depression era, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's as that turns around, I don't know. I just really love seeing people like you come into the city and just say, hey, we just want to be a part of the turnaround, and you're going to raise your family here. And as your kids and my kids grow up, they're pretty close in age.
Oh, yeah.
Mine are between 1 and 5, and I have a 2-year-old as well. So as they're growing up, I want them to have that Texan pride a little bit of hey, I'm from Kittanning, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And we're a comeback city, and we're hard-nosed, and we know how to work, and we're going to go anywhere and succeed no matter what we do in life, because we're from Kittanning, dang it. And so that's how I feel about it. I just I don't know, just gets me excited to hear about that for you, and I'm just so glad you're in town.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to be back, and it's nice to feel part of a tight-knit community and getting to know my neighbors, and that closeness was definitely something we didn't experience that much in Texas. So it's a nice thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as you're moving forward with your business, if you have new things coming out, whatever, please keep us all posted.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully everyone will go on and like your Facebook page, and we'll go check out your website. And then hopefully I'll have you on again sometime.
Awesome. I would love that.
All right.
Thank you.
I so appreciate your time. As always, you guys, God bless you. We will
Thanks, Kittanning.
see you in the next one.